Thank you so much for making time to come out for a very special event tonight. My name is Yvette, Miley. On behalf of the NBCU News Group, welcome to 30 Rock. Welcome, welcome. Welcome to the military veterans in journalism. Welcome to the Veterans Network. And welcome to members of the Comcast Military ERG. This is a really special night for us. We'd like to thank Diane Festa and her team. We'd like to thank Christina, and who can say no to Lucy? Is there anyone in this room that can say no to Lucy? We absolutely cannot say no to Lucy. And because Lucy is who she is, so passionate about this, she pushed this, she made it happen. She got Elizabeth Flores to make it happen, the Vice President and News Director of Channel 10 in Philadelphia. So many people are responsible for having you here in this room tonight. And we want to start by sharing with you a video that members of our team put together and aired during Military Appreciation Month. And we think this is a good way to kick off the night. And then you'll hear immediately after this video, I'll bring up someone who's truly, truly special to share a few words with you of welcome. Let's take a look at the video.
I'm NBC News Pentagon correspondent Courtney Cubey. I've been reporting on the Pentagon for 17 years, traveling to dozens of countries to cover the U.S. military around the world. We are proud to highlight their stories. Those in the Army, the Marine Corps, the Navy, the Coast Guard, the Air Force, and the Space Force. NBC News has been there to cover their service and sacrifice, transition, and triumph. Stories told by our journalists, some veterans themselves, now working in our newsrooms, and others with a deep personal connection to the U.S. military. We're going beyond saying thank you for your service, having intimate conversations with those who've served our country, creating a stronger connection and understanding between our veterans and our community.
You know, the young man that I'm about to introduce to you today to come up and welcome you is my boss. And sometimes you don't get to pick your family or your bosses. If I had an opportunity to pick him as my boss, I would pick him. Why? Because he believes in diversity, he believes in inclusion, and he walks it, not just talk it. You will meet a lot of people who just talk and talk and talk. He backs it up. He's the chairman of the NBCU News Group, Cesar Conde.
So good evening. You see how Yvette so kindly injects the word young in there? Thank you, Yvette, Miley, for your wonderful words. Now I know this executive thing doesn't, you could be a comedian too. Yvette is been at the forefront and at the core of all of the work that we've done at the NBCUniversal News Group since we started this journey. And so I'm very proud and grateful to have her as part of our leadership team. Thank you, Yvette. Good evening, everyone. It's nice to see you. Welcome all of you to 30 Rock that are visiting us. For those of you here at 30 Rock, welcome to our special space here. It's really wonderful to be here with you all tonight. I wanted to make the time to be here personally because this is an incredibly important initiative and an incredibly important topic for a variety of reasons. On behalf of all of us at NBCUniversal, frankly, but particularly the NBCU News Group, we are so proud and so happy to support this incredible initiative of bringing more of our military veterans to work in our newsrooms around the country. We know that there are countless stories of sacrifice, of inspiration, and of courage to be told, and we also know that the values and the work ethic that our military teaches our women and our men add so much value to our company here at NBCUniversal and certainly to Comcast NBCU at large. And so it means a lot to us. I want to thank a few people. I want to thank the whole team because, you know, Yvette said it, this is at its core collaboration. This would not have gotten done without the incredible work and collaboration from many teams here in New York, many teams in Philadelphia. But I do want to thank Cristina Boada and Lucy Bustamante personally. It gives us great pride that Cristina is part of our NBC News team here in New York, and she's done such an incredible job. So thank you, Cristina. And Lucy, as Yvette said, who says no to Lucy? I've had the great privilege of knowing Lucy and Lucy's husband, Ricky, from a long time when we were younger. And I couldn't be more proud of their vision, of their leadership, for bringing this initiative to fruition. So thank you both for your work and for your leadership on so many fronts. I also lastly just want to thank our parent company at Comcast. We are very lucky to be at companies that have these type of values and are willing to put their resources to support the things that matter. And this is one of, I think, the many initiatives that we have done here, certainly at the news group at NBCUniversal, that we could not have done without the support of Comcast. So thank you to all of our friends from Comcast who are here today. And with that, I want to introduce our newly inducted leader of Comcast Military, Mona Dexter, who is here with us today. Mona, please join me.
Thank you, Cesar. This is such a great turnout. This is fantastic. Well, good evening and welcome. Veterans, service members, military spouses, military family members, advocates. First, I'd like to thank my deepest gratitude to all of you for your service and unparalleled commitment to our country. As an Army family member, this is very near and dear to my heart, and we are proud to have you join us here today as we celebrate Military Appreciation Month and the vital contributions of military journalists. At Comcast NBCUniversal, our connection to the military community goes back decades. Our founder, Ralph Roberts, is a World War II Navy veteran, and he regarded serving veterans and their families as a core corporate responsibility from the beginning. So I'm proud to share that since 2015, we have hired nearly 21,000 veterans, service members, and military spouses within our enterprise. I believe the number I saw today was 20,563, so we're getting closer to that 21,000. But we've also been recognized as one of the nation's top employers for military-connected talent by the Department of Defense, Military Times, Military Friendly, Diversity Inc., and Vets Indexes. And many of our teammates proudly call themselves veterans, soldiers, Marines, sailors, airmen, Coast Guardmen, and military spouses, and military caregivers. We'll add guardians soon. We have to give them some time to actually complete that service and then come to us, but we'll get there. We value their entrepreneurial spirit, their integrity, their dedication, the dedication these individuals bring to our organization, and we work year-round to continue to create an inclusive and empowering workplace where they can continue to grow and thrive. So no matter where our teammates are in their military journey, we're here to support them and their families at every turn and through every transition, because transition is not a singular event. We're aware of the many challenges that they often face because of the unique lifestyle and culture that are part of service. We're proud to offer comprehensive benefits and programs to meet their unique needs. I will say, having worked with many businesses across many industries, the military concierge that we have truly is best in class and one that I've not heard of anywhere else, and I am proud to say that. We also have special guard and reserve leave, differential pay, military spouse transfer assistant to ensure portability and continued economic opportunity for military families. Our VetNet Employee Resource Group. I had the opportunity to meet many of the NBCU VetNet group at the Veterans Day Parade in New York City in November. It's another great example of how our connection to the military has influenced our company culture and focus. With almost 10,000 members, it is a strong force that continues to grow, and it's a vital support system for our military-connected teammates, providing opportunities for mentorship, networking, like tonight, and continued professional development. And this group also participates in several military-related service projects each year to include Wreaths Across America and Boxes to Boots, and continue that sense of service for our teammates. I'm excited that NBCU is expanding on our mission to create pathways to meaningful employment for our nation's veterans and their families. Through our partnership with military veterans in journalism, we aim to provide a platform for military journalists to connect with hiring managers and learn about employment opportunities within our organization. And this is a big organization with a lot of opportunities. Having diversity in our newsrooms is essential, and we recognize that our goal is to ensure that our team accurately reflects the audiences we serve across all brands and platforms. We also believe that a diverse workforce not only enriches our organization, but also empowers us to tell more compelling and inclusive stories. The veteran community in particular brings a unique perspective to storytelling. Your experiences and insights are invaluable in helping us create content that resonates with our audience, and we're proud to stand with you and support your growth and development in this industry. This evening, we have an exceptional group of talented veterans, military spouses, and newsroom leaders who will share their experiences and insights on their roles at NBC News. I encourage you to make the most of this event. Engage with the newsroom leaders, network with your peers, explore the many opportunities available to you here at Comcast NBCUniversal, because again, it is a very big enterprise with a lot of opportunities. Before we move on, though, I would like to express heartfelt thanks to our incredible panelists, who you will see soon. Their stories and guidance will undoubtedly inspire us all. I'd also like to express my gratitude to military veterans in journalism for their partnership and support of the military community. Together, we can make a difference in the lives of those who have served our country and continue to serve through journalism and storytelling. And now, it is my pleasure to introduce our panel moderator, who needs no introduction and is a force to be reckoned with and nobody can say no to, Lucy Bustamante, who is our morning news anchor for our NBC and Telemundo station in Philadelphia.
Trust me, you don't have to say anything else, I promise. Thank you so much. Thank you for being here. Oh my goodness. I'm pinching myself. This is a dream come true. Thank you, Cesar, for your beautiful words. Mona, for your continued partnership. Diane Festa, for lending me Christina. I promise I don't own her. She owns me, but I don't own her, I promise. Corey Harding, thank you so much. As Cesar said, this started with, hey, what do you think, sir? Good idea? And he says, you know what? I like it. Let's see how we can expand veterans coverage and couple of different modalities, whether it's journalistically or sales-wise, or I like where this could go. And he pointed me to all the right people. Emma, Yvette, who has just fed it so much. The video that you saw was created by her department with her funds. You are here tonight because of her and her department, and Ryan Ruggiero, who is just amazing how much energy that man has. Steve Salata, Christina, like Yvette said, to borrow your words, you can't really choose your family or your bosses, but you have been sent from above. And not just for me, but for this room full of veterans and their families. Christine Cesar, her partner on the right here, you infuse everything with so much organization and sense. You make it all make sense, Christine, and thank you for allowing me into your network circle to be able to launch this with the blessing of my boss, Elizabeth Flores. Elizabeth, she understood that our company is so damn good at understanding our Latino roots, right? Like, I've been watching Telemundo before I spoke English, no aprendí nada hasta que tenía los 5 o 6 años, now I get to anchor in Spanish and in English, this is amazing, right? But the veteran identity, the military spouse identity, to be able to amplify that the way that this company amplifies so many other things. And Yvette and Elizabeth and Cesar and Diane and Mona and your predecessor, Carol, started with a conversation with Steve in the lobby at 1800 Arch Street on the day that we pulled out of Afghanistan. And we weren't having the political conversation. We were having the, wow, that was hard. How are you? How are you today? Because we have Gold Star families in our audience today. Victoria, bless you, my friend, for being here, who've lost their husbands in that fight. They have missed their children's birth because of it. They have FaceTimed birthdays because of it, my own beloved husband included. And that service-centered identity belongs at the table in journalistic spaces. And so I'd like to introduce you as well, to take the liberty of Rebecca Blumenstein. She is our brand new president of NBC News. And just it's an honor to have her in the room as well. Blaine Alexander, Karen Swenson, Today Show contributor. And these are the faces that run our news and the faces that you see. And so we're all just so joyful to have you in the room. And I will stop talking because it is about our panelists that we are so proud to have as part of our company. But once again, thank you. Thank you for showing up and trusting us as a media organization that we want to create a space. Michael Hopper produced the first Veterans show on Veterans Day last year, streaming. Michael Hopper, if you can wave to the crowd, please. And he is one of the first people that actually put his blood, sweat, and tears to actually put something like this on the air. So thank you so much for that. Take a sip. Last but not least, Lisa Warnick, please wave. Where'd you go? Lisa Warnick was our global co-lead, / as she calls herself, my Jewish mama. Lisa is where she said, that's a great idea, honey. You should tell Yvette and Cesar. You should tell them. Yeah, you should. Let's see who we can connect you to. Lisa, you're magic. You're magic. And so, whoever is blessed to meet you and run ideas by you, they will be all the smarter and all the more connected afterwards. So thank you. It is my honor to introduce, I feel like I'm holding a beer. I'm going to put that right there. Appropriate for the after hours. Dr. John Torres, such an important person in the room right now. Retired colonel, pilot. You will know him as NBC News and MSNBC senior medical correspondent. ER physician, current NATO forces instructor of casualty combat care, Air Force brat, and Air National Guard. If we could please give him a round of applause. Also, his producer, Patrick Martin, NBC News producer for the medical unit, U.S. Army veteran, Airborne Infantry Squad leader, wounded combat veteran. Thank you, Patrick. Priya Sridhar, NBC Telemundo San Diego, political reporter and host, officer in the Naval Reserves, MVJ board member, Council of Foreign Relations as well. Last but not least, Heather Blasko, CNBC transmission coordinator for media acquisition technology, world headquarters, U.S. Air Force during the Cold War, where she provided two-way communications to the Joint Chiefs of Staff. We have some serious stars here, so we're going to get right into this conversation. Guys, I think they want me to join you in this chair, so give me a second to make it there. We'll start with you, Doc. Tell us what made you, start with telling us what you did in the military, and then why did you transition to news?
So I think the mic's working. Yeah, I did a lot of things in the military. I started off, I was an Air Force brat. My dad was in the military. I was raised in that environment, and I ended up going straight into the military, went to the Air Force Academy, so went to Service Academy. From there, went on to be a pilot. I flew for 8 years, but while I was flying, I realized there was something else I wanted to do, and that was be a doctor. And so I decided to transition, became a physician. When I got out, I decided I wanted nothing to do with the military ever again because I'd been in the military for 32 years, and I was tired of it, blah, blah, blah. I went back in the military a year and a half later, and I went to National Guard because I thought, there was something in my life that was missing. And so I ended up doing that. And so I've been active duty, I've been Guard, I've been reserves, I've been the whole gamut, and ended up in the National Guard as a physician. You can see here we're down in El Salvador doing some missions down there. And it was so fulfilling doing that. Ended up doing it for 32 years total, retired in 2014. And then there was something else that was just kind of missing in my life. And along the way, accidentally, I kind of fell into doing TV because I was working in an emergency room and they needed a doctor expert. And then they decided to keep using me, and it just kind of snowballed into doing this kind of thing. Well, after 2014, I said, let me put a little more effort into trying to see if I could do this more on a full-time basis. Started doing that for a TV station in Denver, and then NBC came along, and NBC said, we want to talk to you. And one of the things I do have to say to NBC is, kudos to them because, number one, they recognized the power of being a veteran and how important that was to making sure that you understood more of the spectrum of the population than what most TV stations, I think, understand. And number two, they also let me continue, like you mentioned. I work right now with NATO and do a lot of instructing overseas with NATO Special Forces, and they're allowing me to continue to do that. And even though that's not part of my military career, that's part of what I'm doing now to pay it forward. And they're saying, yes, please go ahead and do that. As a matter of fact, they keep encouraging me to do that, which is great. And I can't thank them enough.
Patrick, tell us my favorite story when we prepared for this. You had an embedded journalist in one of your combat tours. How did that experience inspire you to transition? Tell us what you did in the military first.
Right. So I was in the. Is this? I don't know. I was in the 82nd Airborne for. Oh, all right. I was in the 82nd Airborne for 8 years, 7 months, and I've been deployed multiple times. And that's, like, if you can see it, that's from when we were in Haiti for the earthquake relief. And then this is what kind of got me to actually get into the news business. So this was during the surge, and we had an embedded reporter with us. And basically, everyone knows that the news cycle does not sleep. And the thing is in combat, it's not always combat. There are times of lulls. So what they ended up doing is saying, oh, well, we went into a mosque, guns blazing, and, we fired a warning shot, like during a patrol in Iraq. And so it was just, it got me thinking, I want to actually tell stories for the people who I represent. And obviously I wanted to stay in the military, but I got hurt in Afghanistan, which kind of pushed me out because I was no longer on airborne status. And from there, I already enjoyed writing. So I decided to pursue journalism and actually tell the stories of, my fellow servicemen and my brothers and sisters in arms. And that was really the impetus to get me to get into news. And then I realized when I was in South Florida that, oh my God, we have a lot of great benefits as veterans. Like, I'm gonna take advantage of all the college I can. So then I ended up pursuing a degree at Columbia to try to get me in the room to talk to some of the bigger networks. So that's kind of my story of how I got to where I was.
Oh, okay. So my story was a little bit more unconventional because unlike most people who join the military when they're either 18 or straight out of college, I actually joined the military in my early 30s. So I had been a journalist, went to Northwestern for grad school, started in a very tiny NBC affiliate in Bangor, Maine. That was my first market. And then I was kind of hopping all over the place, and I ended up being overseas for a few years in India. I was posted in New Delhi, and when you're overseas, you end up becoming friends with a lot of expats. I came back to the United States and I was trying to figure out what to do with my life. And I had always been interested in serving my country. So I'm first generation American. My parents are immigrants. And so I think they really instilled that sense of gratitude in me, that, you should feel so thankful that you got so many opportunities and, you had all these resources at your fingertips. And so there was something always in me that was so grateful to the United States that I was able to, pursue my passion of news. And so someone came up to me from that time period of being in India and said, have you ever thought about joining the Navy Reserve? And I thought, wow, that's kind of crazy. I didn't really know. There was nobody in my family who had ever served in the military. I grew up in Massachusetts. There's not a whole lot of military folks out there. But I thought, this seems intriguing. And so I went and spoke to a recruiter, went through the entire process, and it was the best decision of my life. And so I've been in the Navy now for 7 years. I'm a public affairs officer. I am currently with 7th Fleet, if anyone knows what that means, but we're in the most exciting area of the world because we have China and Taiwan in our backyard. So in just a few weeks, I'm going to be going on orders to Japan, and I'm going to be on the Blue Ridge, if anyone knows that. It's the oldest operational warship in the Navy fleet currently. And then I'm also pursuing a second master's at the Naval War College in Defense and Strategic Studies. And I think that has just been so invaluable to all the reporting that I do and the journalism that I do. So, and then I'm in San Diego currently as the political reporter at the NBC station there. We have a huge active duty and veteran population there. And so I've found that it really helps as far as our viewers feeling more comfortable, perhaps, coming to me with story ideas because of my military service.
Okay, that's a hard one to follow. I'm currently at CNBC. I've been there about 22 years, and I work behind the scenes. And I started out as a broadcast engineer, and then it changed, well, originally I was in the military. Let me start that way. I did airborne communications on the Looking Glass, and I provided air-to-air, air-to-ground, and air-to-satellite communications on RC and KC 135s. So the way I got into this business was when I got out, I could have been a firefighter, and I got accepted that day, and then I also had to apply to a bunch of Earth stations, anything to do with communications. And Vivek's National Gateway, their Earth station, gave me an opportunity at the same time. So I was like, firewoman, or let me try this. And I didn't know anything at all about television. And I just knew frequencies and satellite uplinks and downlinks and how to control different paths. And, So anyway, they taught me television, and I couldn't be happier. NBC has been a home, and they are great. And anybody who works for them should feel very privileged because they really care. And if you ask anybody for help or anything, they'll be there for you. And I've had a lot of help along the way, and I want to thank all those people. Y'all know who you are. Thank you.
What an incredible team, my gosh. Heather's got a great story about Cold War later, and then how you transition to social media and streaming from everything you did. We'll get to that in a second. So at this point, we worked together with the Veterans Show, Michael Hopper, Christine, and we learned about you in the context of your veteran status, Dr. Torres. And when you were interviewing Dr. Rachel Yehuda at the VA, she's also a Mount Sinai physician, this was a story that you wanted to use as an example of how your veteran status informed your reporting. Tell us a little bit about how you brought that side of your identity to the story and how you think it helped.
And the story was basically about the using psilocybin, using psychedelics to try and help veterans, especially with PTSD. And that's new research that's coming out right now. So we wanted to do a story on it. And so we had been talking about the story, wanting to do the story, trying to sell the story for those who know what that means, trying to pitch it to people. And we were able to do that. At the same time, it was one of those things to make sure that we told the story correctly. And for anyone that's worked with agencies, government agencies in particular, like the VA, they're very hesitant to do anything. So we weren't able to do anything through the VA, but we were able to do it through Mount Sinai in a private status with a doctor who worked in both. But we also had to be very careful about how we addressed the story because we couldn't say she was a VA doctor. We could only say she was a Mount Sinai doctor because of the specifics of how we were doing this. And so, I think, number one, it helped understand that because being in the military, you understand how to compartmentalize different information, what's classified, what's not classified, what you can talk about, what you can't talk about. And I think that really helps when you're doing this kind of reporting because then you don't end up spilling over into those areas where you could get somebody into trouble. And so you're very careful about that, and you're very careful to let them know you're going to do that. That's number one. Number two, you're also very sensitive to what the veteran is going through because you have gone through some of that or you know people that have gone through some of that. And so you want to make sure you're telling it from that perspective of the veteran, what they're going through, what this research in particular means to them, and not just the research and the headlines behind the research and what's the latest, greatest, wowest, sexiest thing about it, but what does this mean? What's the take-home message here, and how can this help veterans? And I think that's the most important thing that I got out of that, to be able to do that. And that's something that being a veteran has helped me, not just be comfortable with telling the story, but understanding how to tell a story and getting that confidence from the people because I know where they're coming from, I know what shoes they've been in, and I know how to address that.
I think that was, when we were talking, Dr. Torres, about that, it was also hey, doc, with that hat on, is it okay to tell veterans that this modality of treatment exists? Like, it's still being studied. Like, can Dr. Torres go on the news and talk about psilocybin for PTSD, right? And so to have that backing as a physician and a military physician, it really gave us the confidence to be able to proceed boldly with the information, to be able to provide that to an audience that's still trying to figure it out. What does heal me?
And that's one thing about NBC, and one thing that always amazed me when I came here is they're very good about making sure that they vetted their stories, that their stories are extremely accurate. Even me being a doctor, I can come to them with information, and they want another source. They want to make sure it's not just coming from me and my own biases involved, but there's another source there. And for something like this, for me to be able to say, yes, this is something that's important for veterans, they're going across the border in New Mexico to do this. This research is showing that it has a lot of benefits, but it's not there yet. And making sure that I understand enough to answer that question at the bottom of saying, this is not ready yet, but it's coming around the corner. And so with more research, which is what the story was about, then we can go ahead and make sure that this is something that's very helpful.
You come across as very passionate about it. Is that because you really believe this could be a big step in the direction of helping out?
I know the standard of care isn't sufficient for many of our veterans, and they deserve to have this. But at the same time, I also know that we don't have enough information to replace the standard of care yet.
In line with military culture, the Capone sought to help their own, celebrating their healing by paying it forward.
So that's just one veteran organization that has formed where the nonprofits literally donate money to send other special ops members to other countries to get treatments that are not approved yet in the United States. So it's something I checked with Dr. Yehuda yesterday, no update to the clinical trial yet, still ongoing, and this is how it goes. I want to move on to Patrick. Thank you, Doc. Patrick, you were telling a really interesting story as well about your own wounds and how you bring that to the table when you're talking to veterans, and the psychological wounds that you were able to pull out of fellow vets for a story that you did with Kate Snow. Tell us about that.
Right, so I did a story on military sexual trauma and how when you have your disability, how it was being turned down. And the way that I was actually really able to get a foothold to talk to these people is I said, hey, I'm 80% disabled. I know how ridiculous this is. Like, there's so much red tape. And they're like, you have no idea when it comes to military sexual trauma because it just lays on even more paperwork. So I believe that I was really able to talk to a veteran to veteran, to establish that relationship before I would say, hey, let me put you on camera. Because you can talk to someone until the cows come home, but until you put them on camera or until that story actually goes public, then that's how you've actually developed trust. So if we want to.
Why do you think you got denied so many times, Brigitte?
A male veteran service officer said to me, you will not be paid for rape in the military. And I said, I'm not here to be paid for rape in the military. I'm here to be appropriately compensated for my injuries that happened in the military, which happened to have been rape. And he just threw the papers, literally threw the papers in the air.
He threw the papers in the air?
Threw them in the air.
Yeah, so that was Brigitte McCoy, and it was so bad for her that after she got out of the military and she wasn't able to get her disability, and she already had PTSD from military sexual trauma, from MST, she was living in her car and couldn't make ends meet. So what I did is all the reporting is I contacted these people and said, hey, we want to share your story. What is the best way to do this? How do you feel most trusted in us telling your story? We want to make sure that we aren't going above or we're not going out of bounds on anything. And then it's also such a difficult story to tell because a lot of people don't realize how much disability really matters for veterans. Because if you're under 50%, you're not getting health care. And that is something that it really, really shined through when I was talking to these survivors.
This is where I have to point out Christina and Diane Festa once again. The setup of their department is that literally the network feeds down and we feed up to them. And the way that the VA is set up is literally everybody served, military families together, and everyone serves this large entity, DOD to VA, and then everybody moves to other cities, and you have to learn each VA per city. And it was through a collaboration that Christine and Diane all facilitated with 5 other stations to figure out why these veterans weren't getting the benefits that they were due, veterans of color, and the disparity in that. And so the sheer power that they injected into one story that started in Philly and then just spread it to the rest of the country and educated 5 different investigative units on what a DD-214 is and what disability ratings are. And don't tell them your headaches got better because you'll get docked from 80 to 70% disability. And for us to learn that the way that we learn about other systems in the government, right, that we answer to. So it's an honor to have this conversation in this room because it's real solution-based journalism. Priya, we want to hear your story because you have an incredible tempo of reservist work and the reporting that you do. So we want to show the story that meant something to you as well.
Thanks. So basically, I found out about this Navy corpsman who had served in Iraq in 2004 through a reserve friend of mine who's actually a lawyer, and he volunteers some of his time with the Veterans Legal Institute, and basically they sort of identify veterans who maybe didn't get acknowledged for their service at the time, and so retroactively they were trying to do the paperwork so that this man could get a Purple Heart because he did a bunch of heroic things in Iraq, and there were 2 members of his platoon that he was with in Iraq who ended up dying. So I did that story on him. I mean, it was incredibly well received, as I said, obviously in San Diego because we are a huge military and veteran audience. And so through that story, he ended up telling me about this hike that they do every year on the same day that their friends were killed. And all of the Marines who were part of that unit come back to San Diego to hike this mountain in Camp Pendleton. And he's like, you know what? We just connected, Navy to Navy. He's like, maybe I can talk to the guys and maybe you can come on the hike. And I was like, okay, I don't want to intrude. This is a very intimate thing that you guys are doing. But he ended up, talking to them and telling them about me, and they said, all right, let's bring her. And I was able to get my cameraman too, because that was important to document it, obviously, for the story. And so it was this really grueling hike to the very top. And, I think, obviously, as you guys know, these traditionally are people who don't like to talk about emotions or maybe what happened. And so it wasn't like a traditional sit-down interview. It was like we were hiking up the mountain and we were just talking. And this also, just for context, was happening right after the U.S. withdrawal from Afghanistan. So there was a lot of conversations that were happening on the hike, like, hey, our buddies were killed. Was it all worth it? It was so hard to see all of that video. And so it was just really organic, and I think it happened this way because I am still in the military, so we can play a clip of kind of how the conversation went.
Got hit, an RPG round knocked me to the ground, and I had shrapnel that came up and down my back, peppered me pretty hot. And then, Doc went out to the middle of the road right when a firefight was going on with rounds going over my head and covered my body, with his own body.
So he's talking about how the guy right here saved his life. But he's like, and when we got to the top of the mountain, the corpsman was telling me that he has literally never repeated that story in 10 years. And we got to the top of the mountain and they were all sort of taking a moment of silence, standing separately. I was obviously, just trying to respect their space, but they were crying and they were really open to allowing us to be there and share it on camera. And I definitely don't think I would have gotten any of that access if I wasn't a person who still wears a uniform.
You can pass it to Heather as well. Heather, I know that your experience in the military, you actually have a more fun story here because you were able to work how many Olympics now?
Oh, I've done 4 Olympics already, but I do it out of the Stanford Sports Center. I'm the home base, so every camera that's out there, every sporting event comes through there, and then we distribute it, whether it be IP or digital streaming or whether it goes on satellite for all the networks. So it's been very exciting. It's always a great opportunity for me, and I'm always very appreciative.
What do you think the military experience did for you to be able to handle everything coming at you from so many sources?
Well, there's a lot of sources, as you can see, but we work long days, 12-hour days, every day, no breaks. So it's kind of just like being in the military, you know what I'm saying? And, it's about that you become a team, and, we learn how to be a team and work with people and that camaraderie. And a lot of people just can't do that. You can't just be in the same room with somebody for 12 hours every day and still get along, So I think that really helps, working with people, and just like the focus. You got to just keep focusing and find a way to push through.
I want you to pass the microphone to Priya real quick because I'm going to talk to the 2 reservists here as well. Priya, the tempo that you have, because you don't do duty where you report. Tell people how you balance reservists and reporting.
I almost want to say very poorly, but I'm still standing here. So what's funny about the DoD, as many of you guys know, is when I was living in Texas as a TV reporter, they were flying me to San Diego, and now that I live in San Diego, the DoD is flying me to Texas to drill. So, that's very standard. So yeah, now I drill in Fort Worth, and I mean, those 12, it happens every 3 months that I have to go down to Fort Worth. And so I work Monday through Friday at NBC. I will oftentimes catch the last flight out from San Diego to Dallas, drive 45 minutes to base, check into the Navy Lodge. By the time all of that happens, I basically get 3 or 4 hours of sleep before I have to muster, work 2 days in a row in Fort Worth, drive back to Dallas, get on the plane, and then I'm back at work on Monday morning. So yeah, it's a lot. And then in addition to that, having to coordinate the fact that I'm going to Japan for orders soon. And unfortunately, there's going to be a special election in San Diego, and I'm the political reporter. So having this constant anxiety of like, oh my God, am I going to miss the election because I have to go to Japan? And so I think the longer that I've been in, I've just, sort of kind of resigned myself to the fact that I can't control the news cycle and I can't control the Navy. So I'm just going to go wherever anyone tells me to go and do my very best. And, as everyone has stated, I mean, NBC has just been so supportive, and I'm really, really grateful for that because they see what, the fact that I can get stories like what I was, telling you guys about, or I've been able to provide more nuance to some of the reporting because of my time in the military, but it's hard to balance both, I'm not going to lie.
We can pass the mic to Dr. Torres as well. Doc, I know you said that you balance it beautifully. The company allows you to do it. How much time are you gone when you go?
So when I go to teach the NATO Special Forces, it's usually 2 weeks at a time, and so when I go there, it's the couple days to get there, a couple of days to get back. So it's about 2.5 weeks that they do this, and I end up doing this every 3 or 4 times a year. And so it's a very big time commitment. But again, NBC is appreciative of the fact I do that, number one, and they're very willing to let me do that because one, we've done some stories out of that, which is great. But they also understand when I first came here, they wanted to do more stories, and I went and I talked to them, and these are special forces guys, European, NATO special forces in particular, and so these are the guys that a lot of times change their identities, they have fake names, fake addresses, and uniformly they were like, no, we don't want to be on camera. And so when I came back to NBC, I thought it was going to be a bit of a battle because they wanted stories, and when I came back and sat down with them and I said, these guys, if we identify them, they could die, their families could die, so we're not going to do that. And they were like, that's perfect, we don't want to do it. We don't want to have anything to do with that if that's the problem. They didn't push it, which is fantastic. So very appreciative of that. And then, just being here, I think, and being a veteran, I think all of us would agree that it gives you kind of a bit of a leg up and when you're approaching these things because, for lack of a better word, and I don't think it's a bad word, but you can embrace the suck. And so you understand what it's like to be here, 12 hours and then come back 3 hours later, another 12 hours, and then just things aren't working the way you want to work. And military teaches you how to do that, and NBC appreciates that.
That is wonderful to hear. I want to get into the last question here, and then we'll introduce you to Russell Midori from MVJ, and then you guys can do what you're here to do, which is meet all of our great hiring managers and talk amongst yourselves and collaborate, because this is a yes place, and we're just so proud to have you here. I want to know what your experience was. We'll go back to you, Doc, with diversity in the military, both with your own identity and also the cultures that you interact with when you are overseas.
It's interesting, especially in the military, having done that for 32 years, and having grown up in that environment. When I stepped out of that environment, I was a bit surprised at how diversity was handled in the real world versus in the military, because in the military, I was used to working with different races, different genders, different gender identities, LGBTQ, the whole gamut. And it was just, as long as they did their job and I did my job, they had my back, I had their back, it was perfectly fine. You didn't even care about it. And then I got out in the civilian world and people tended to care about that for some reason. And so that was a bit of a shock. And so I think that, in the military, you understand that, and you understand that, the person's valued based on what they can do and how well they can protect your back and how well you can protect their back. That's the important thing, not, what they care that they do when they're home. I mean, who cares, really?
Sure. That's right. Patrick, same question for you. And if you can also touch on teaching us the difference between a veteran with a disability and a disabled veteran.
Well, I mean, I believe I can go with the first one first, with a disabled veteran and a veteran with a disability. Most people who were in the OIF, OEF wars have some form of PTSD. It's just what happened when it was over there and what we saw and what we did. What I would say for like a disabled veteran is that that's usually someone that's 100% disabled as compared to someone with a disability who might be a little bit lower, but has been a combat wound, maybe they've had a TBI, something like that. So I believe those would be the kind of two differences. And one being 100% disabled, cannot work, and then a disabled veteran being someone that can work, but yet still has these combat wounds. And then for the diversity's sake, anytime that you're in a firefight, I've never once ever considered anybody's race or gender. Like, I can just say that.
So for any of you ladies who have served, you've probably encountered this question, which is when, you say, I'm in the military, they're like, oh, it's not your husband, or, it's you, it's really you. It happens all the time at airports when, I'm trying to check my bag for free and I'm on orders and, oh, I would have never thought you're a naval officer, So I get that a lot, and hopefully that, gets old after a while, but I am seeing more and more women joining the military and more people of other races. And actually right now I'm trying to do a story because we're celebrating AAPI month, the Asian American Pacific Islander month, and there's a huge Filipino community in the Navy. So when I go back to San Diego tomorrow, I'm going to be trying to highlight some sailors, Filipino sailors who serve in San Diego. But just like anything else, I don't think in the military I necessarily talk to people. It's just like any other organization where, you might find that you have some common ground with someone because, if I see another Indian sailor, we might talk about the fact that we had a similar experience that led us to joining the military. But beyond that, I would say it's not really something I think about too much.
Well, when I was in, it was the Cold War, so I was one of the first females, and that wasn't always like such a great word to be called back then. But, the standards have definitely changed and opened up, and now you can be and do anything you want. And I found that working here at NBC and Comcast, and they just open to everybody. You are not a number. You are a person, and you have feelings, and they appreciate your home life. And it's just, nobody really cares at all what your diversity really is unless you need them to, I think. Anyway, there you go.
It's such an important conversation. We continue to cover stories on how you see the numbers of veterans of color in the higher ranks you go, that dwindles. The effort that's happening to get those numbers to be higher, retention rates for females. The story that you did, Patrick, with sexual assault in the military. And then also the things that deserve so much celebration, the work ethic, the transfer of treating a stranger like you've known them all your life because you're going to have to rely on them for basic necessities. And when you move outside of the military cocoon, you're sort of taken aback why someone can't have an intimate conversation with you within the first 5 minutes of meeting them. And so that's something that is that I know that I've enjoyed as a spouse. And really, before we leave this evening and we're able to continue networking, I just want to see if you guys have any closing thoughts, and then we'll just open it up for 5 minutes of questions, anything pressing, or if not, we'll just let you guys talk amongst yourselves and have the intimate conversations.
And I think the main thing, we've all talked about this, NBC being the family that it is, we're very good at embracing our veteran status and using that for their benefit, but for ours as well, knowing that, as a veteran, one thing you learn in the military is if you say you're going to do it, you're going to do it. And they understand that as well, and they appreciate that.
And I think we're only going to get better stories if we have more veterans in the newsroom. That's the way to do this. You're the ones that are going to be bringing the stories. We used to talk about it like at nightly news. Sometimes the interns would have the best stories that would come through. It's because they were the ones that were talking with that character, with that subject. So if we can expand that, we should.
Yeah, I would say that, there's so much commonality between being in the military and being a journalist. And when I walked into my first reserve center and I told people when they asked me what my civilian career was, I said a reporter. Cleared the room. Nobody wanted to talk to me. But then the more people got to know me, they thought, it was like, oh, well, I can't stand sitting at a desk. I need to be moving all the time. I always want to meet new people, learn new things, see new places. It was so similar to the reasons that they joined the military. And they thought, we're also giving something back. And then I would also say, I sort of stumbled upon VetNet. I wasn't necessarily like seeking it out. And what's really, really neat about VetNet at NBC is just there's been so many people at all stages within this company who have come to me and said, I want to be your mentor, I want to help you. And they've really followed through. And it's just been so nice to have this little family who I really do feel like has my back. And I've just met so many wonderful people. And so that will always continue with you throughout your career, which I think is like really special.
That's all I have to say is just go ahead, knock on that door, give it a shot, because you never know.
Any questions from the crowd? Don't be shy.
Dr. Torres, you said that the NATO troops that Dr. Torres, you said the NATO troops that you were training, they're afraid of being identified. Who are they afraid of? The Russians? Or?
They're not afraid of being identified, but they don't want to be identified because these are the guys that go beyond the front lines into enemy territory. And if they get kidnapped, let's say Ukraine, if they're in Ukraine and they get taken hostage in Ukraine or taken as prisoners of war, one of the first things they're going to do is the Russians are going to go through social media. They're going to find out who their family is, and they're going to send operatives to their family's house and say, we now have your family. We're going to kill them unless you give us classified information. And so they do that particularly to make sure that their families back home are safe, and then when they're out there, they know that, so they can do the fight. And they also know that if they become prisoner of war, that they don't have to worry about that aspect of things. It's real.
Leo, Brian. Hi, this is a question directed for all of you. When covering these complex and serious topics, what do you think is the most valuable part of connecting with a source so that they feel comfortable in opening up to you and letting them, allowing you to tell their story?
Leah graduates Temple University this year, by the way.
I'll go and start. From my perspective, I think one of the things that is easier to do as a veteran when you're talking, especially if you're talking to other veterans, is to break that ice. And to be able to say, because oftentimes I'll get there, they're setting up, these guys are doing all the work. I come in as the talent and just show up and like, ta-da, ask questions. Clothes are off and they're still doing work. But in that time period before we start recording, you usually have time to talk to the person we're going to interview. And that's when you start talking stories and swapping war stories and all these things. And it gets you, it breaks that ice and gets them to understand you a little bit better. And then they understand that they can trust you. And so I think that's important.
I think it's connection. It really is. It has to be connection in the fact that it has to be the connection and the fact, like you said, you're going to be bringing someone that they've never spoke to before to ask you a bunch of very intimate questions. So that's why it's so important to talk to them more than once, not just one pre-interview. And I mean, unless it's the news cycle and the tempo, but you want to just make sure that they are comfortable. Because if you don't have someone that's comfortable that you're talking to, it's not going to make good TV.
Oh, I was just going to say, I mean, I agree with everything everyone was saying. And, I've had the conversation with some people who have said, hey, are you really able to cover veterans or the military? Isn't that some sort of conflict of interest? And, I would say, well, as I've mentioned numerous times tonight, my parents are immigrants. Does that mean I can't cover immigration? I'm a woman. Does that mean I can't cover abortion? I'm a person of color. Does that mean I can't cover like affirmative action stories? So I think the point is that newsrooms need people with all kinds of life experiences, right? And that's going to create better conversations at the editorial tables. And so, no, I don't apologize for any of those things that I am. I connect with you and I say, hey, your story might be similar to mine. And I think that that's how you get way better stories and more nuanced reporting.
Guys, thank you so much for your time and your travel and just being so real. And of course, for your service. Thank you guys. Russell Midori, I'd like to welcome you from Military Veterans and Journalism. You guys answered the call when we rang and said, hey, you want to do something together? And here we are. So thanks for being here.
Thank you, Lucy. All right. Hello, everybody. Thank you all very much for being here. It is quite a privilege to be here among this community of storytellers and truth seekers and muckrakers and a couple other things, but we're in polite company here at NBC. I'll say, when I got out of the Marine Corps 11 years ago, yes, I failed to find a new barber. I got out of the Marine Corps 11 years ago. I had no idea how to break into journalism. And mostly I did it by running up a credit card, traveling around the world, and going completely broke. And I don't recommend that as a strategy for getting ahead in this industry. So it is truly an honor to be here with you all today in the halls of the storied NBC News. I encourage you to meet everybody that you can here, to my community, my military veterans in journalism. It is a pleasure to have you here with us, and to NBC News, and also to Ryan Ruggiero, who really helped organize this thing and did an excellent job. And when MVJ answered NBC's call, it was Ryan who was calling me on my cell phone. So I really do appreciate you, Ryan, and we are very grateful that you've brought us here to meet your colleagues. And they've also got some pretty nice looking appetizers out there. There's a couple of cans of soda left. So without any further ado, let the networking begin. Thank you. All right.